Putback, SNY.TV's YouTube page. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider. We're here to break all things Knicks offseason down, and we got two great guests with you. We've got CP the Fanchise, Knicks Fan TV, and we got Kaz Famuyide from Draft. I'm sorry, Kaz, you're an SNY contributor, but you're also with Fanatics. Yes. I didn't want to mess that up. My fault. Thank you.
It's all good.
For
it's all good, brother.
Fellas. We appreciate you. We got a lot to get to because we got the draft next Wednesday. Knicks having 2 late first-round picks, 1 early second-round pick, and then we've got free agency and the offseason. Knicks have some work to do there, obviously, with trying to re-sign their own guys. But we're going to talk now about how big a leap they can make this offseason. You watch the Celtics win the NBA title. You look at their roster. You think they're going to be there for at least next season and maybe a couple of years beyond. So the Knicks are going to have to contend with them, the other top teams in the East. First order of business for New York, bringing back Isaiah Hartenstein, bringing back OG Anunoby. Both will get significant interest on the open market this offseason. Knicks obviously want both guys back, but they're going to be in that area where they don't have control, where other teams can come in and make big-time offers. Still would expect both to be back, but beyond that, there's not an easy, obvious path for this Knicks team to make a big leap. So, CP, I'm going to start with you. Based on what you know about the offseason, what you're thinking, how much of a leap can this Knicks team make this offseason?
I think depending on who you ask, a lot of people think the Knicks are fairly close. I mean, look, the Celtics are going to be the darlings of the East, no question about it. They're going to be the favorites, but 2 through 4 is wide open. And if you look at the way this Knicks team competed this year, getting the 2 seed and making it all the way to the second round, despite a multitude of injuries, they could be fairly close. And if they don't make that home run splash in the offseason, let's say they used a mid-level exception to get a backup point guard. How do they use the Bogdanovic contract? Do they go out there and make a mid-level trade? I think those things can certainly help boost their depth, but the most important things for the Knicks will be retaining both Isaiah Hartenstein and OG Anunoby. And then as you go into the season, it'll be the health of both Julius Randle and OG Anunoby that will ultimately determine how close the Knicks are to the Boston Celtics. January is great, but it's a long way until April. And so the Knicks have to make sure that they can get there both as healthy as they can. And then for Julius Randle, he's got to be impactful for this team to have a chance.
You know, CP, I feel like this offseason is about one question, right? And what's the cost of being great? And I think last night we all saw what the Boston Celtics were willing to pay for that cost of being great. They had to get rid of guys like Marcus Smart, who were beloved in Boston. They've got rid of Grant Williams and Robert Williams, guys who were very productive for that team last year. And I think the Knicks see themselves in a very similar position. Add to the same caveat with injuries, there's still that sort of variable about what is it really going to look like for an entire season. The good thing about this Knicks team is everything you just mentioned, CP. The Knicks have the treasure chest used to be able to create greatness. They got the picks, they got the cap flexibility, they got the tradable contracts if they want to take that extra leap. The question to answer is, though, what is that extra leap? Me personally, I feel like staying the course right now is probably the best course of action for this Knicks team because of what you lost when you didn't have Julius Randle towards the end of this regular season. Not just because of what he's meant to the building of this franchise, but just his actual game. The things that were glaring in the end of the regular season and in the postseason were things that Julius Randle succeeds at a high level, which is scoring in the paint, which is toughness, which is stretching the floor, and even be able to facilitate to those shooters that really got off towards the end of the year. So I think it's pretty close, and the good thing about the Celtics winning the championship is that they're right up the road. You get 4 cracks at them every year before you get to the playoffs to see just how close you are. So I think it's pretty close. I agree with CP.
And so, if you're close and you want to bring everybody back, you start with OG Anunoby.
I'm not hearing Ian.
He is the top free agent on the market as far as what the Knicks have and what they need to bring back. With Anunoby, I think you look at Philadelphia as the biggest competition for New York because Philadelphia has significant cap space, right? I think priority 1 for them is Paul George with the Clippers. Is George going to extend with the Clippers, re-sign with the Clippers? If not, I think Philadelphia has a big opportunity there to go in and get Paul George. But if George is off the table, I think they turn their attention to a player like Anunoby, where you could come in, if you're Philly, you could make a really aggressive offer. You could force the Knicks to go maybe a little bit beyond where they are comfortable going salary-wise for Anunoby. And if nothing else, you impact their cap sheet moving forward. So that's the way I'm looking at the Anunoby free agency. Maybe Orlando, maybe OKC comes in and then expresses some interest. But I just think at the end of the day, it's going to be the Knicks. It's just a matter of what the number is, what the length of the deal is, what the protections on the contract is. You talk to people around the league, everybody kind of throws out that $35 million a year number as something that's reasonable, logical for Anunoby as a starting point. So we'll see exactly where this thing goes a few days from now. But CP, Anunoby, your thoughts on the contract you would like to see him re-sign to and how his offseason may go?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned on the Hoops Hype podcast with you and Michael Scotto and Steph Bondi, that $35 million, that's about the number that I'd expect OG Anunoby to sign for. And he could, as you said, make the Knicks sweat it out a little bit and maybe take a meeting with Philadelphia or the OKC Thunder. We know those teams will have cap space, and does that drive the price up for the Knicks just a bit? But if I'm Leon Rose, this is a no-brainer. You traded RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, two of your young core, for OG Anunoby, who has become a critical piece for the Knicks' chances in being that premier team as we open the show with. And so there's no number that's too high for me when it comes to OG Anunoby. Injury risk be damned. He has to be in the Knick uniform come next fall for them to even have a chance at being the Kings of the East.
Yeah, CP, I feel like for what you gave up to get OG Anunoby, anything less than retaining him will be seen as a failure in the eyes of many Knicks fans. But in addition to that, whatever money you thought he was going to be able to be worth at the end of the regular season, at the end of the playoffs, last night showed you he's probably going to be worth more than that, because you're going to need to go through Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to even have a shot at being the Kings of the East. And we've seen there's enough data out there to justify that sort of bag that OG is going to want to demand this offseason. Jeremy Grant, a great example. You look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, Jaden McDaniels is a great example. Having two-way guys that are wings that can guard the stars of the league, including Brown and Tatum, are going to be at a premium this year. Look at the Philadelphia 76ers. They got a bird's-eye view of just how good OG Anunoby is, and it wouldn't shock me if they help drive up the price to sign OG, not just because he's a good player, but you get to take him away from that Knicks team that eliminated you from the playoffs this year. So, I mean, I expect a lot of gamesmanship this offseason, and I guess it's all going to benefit OG at the end, because I think even with the injury risk, it's not going to stop the bag that he wants to get this offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Not a price too high for Anunoby for the Knicks. You got to bring him back. Knicks also have a couple of decisions on potential extensions. They can extend Jalen Brunson in mid-July for as many as 4 years, and I think as much as $158 million. Brunson also could wait and explore free agency next summer and can sign a max deal worth in total about 110 more than the extension he could sign. So a big decision for Jalen Brunson. Knicks obviously would love for Brunson to sign that extension, and if he did so, he would be giving the Knicks yet another financial gift, because right now he's on a descending contract, and that descending contract obviously gives the Knicks more financial flexibility over the life of the deal, and it starts Brunson's next salary at lower than it would be if he was on an ascending deal. So he's already given them a favor, but doing this, signing this extension when we know it's way under market value for Brunson, would be a huge assist to the Knicks. And if he did it, it would kind of just align with the way he operates. He always talks about putting the team above himself. He did that with his first deal. He would be doing that in a big way with this extension. And I think at the very least, he will be open to hearing the Knicks pitch on that extension as you get into the offseason. I mean, Kaz, this one seems like a no-brainer from a Knick perspective. But if Jalen Brunson did sign that extension, what would your thoughts be?
I will go out to 33rd and 6th right now and get the clay and get the shovels and get the digging, right? Like, I will start building the statue right away, because Jalen Brunson, we've already known just how much he's overproduced on the contract he's already playing on, right? And for him to not just up his value, not just for his team, but around the league, and take another potential discount in order to help ensure the future stability of this Knicks franchise, it would be, I don't know, like, if I'm not his financial advisor, I probably feel some type of way. But on the other hand, I would just say it speaks to everything that you love about Jalen Brunson. I mean, you hear about the stories about him watching Derek Jeter interviews with his dad as far as how they handle New York City. And this is another way of knowing that, yes, you can get the bag here in New York. And obviously being a New York City superstar comes with its own perks. But I think he knows enough that one of the most valuable assets on that team is his contract. And signing an extension this offseason, which gives the Knicks more flexibility to get better, I mean, I don't know what else you want the guy to do, man. It would be some legendary stuff if he could pull that off.
Yeah, and you look at – go ahead, CP.
No, I'm with Kaz. I mean, you could start putting the statue out there for him out there on 34th and 7th, but it would just be another, signal that Jalen Brunson is all about winning for this team and making the sacrifice. Players make that sacrifice a lot of times on the court, but when they do it in the pocketbooks as well, I mean, that's also an admirable feat. And so with his focus on winning and helping the Knicks be as flexible as they can in navigating the new CBA, that would be a home run for them.
Yeah, and CP, you hit on it. That new CBA, you want to stay out of that second apron territory because you're really limited in what you can do to improve your team once you get up there. And Brunson, if he took this deal, would be doing the Knicks a big favor by keeping them further away from that second apron, just giving them more, obviously, money, but more options to use when going out to improve the team. Now, Julius Randle, also eligible for an extension. Early August, he would have to decline his player option, and then he could extend for, I believe, 4 additional seasons. He could also obviously wait it out and then explore free agency. I'm going to stick just with what I had in my predictions on SNY.TV, offseason predictions. I predicted then that Julius and the Knicks would not be able to come to an agreement on the extension. I'm sticking with that at this point, and I'm going to start with you, CP. Julius extension, how would you approach that?
Well, I'm with you on your prediction. I don't think they sign it this season. And also, if I'm the Knicks, I want to maintain my flexibility. If there is that home run trade to make, you might have to put Julius Randle's salary in there, and extending him could complicate things a little bit. And also, I'd be keen to let him play this out. Take it to the end of next season. See how far he takes his team in the playoffs next year. Is he there healthy? Is he going to be impactful? Then you can truly determine what his market value will be going forward and determine if he's part of your future or not.
Kaz, if you don't extend him, do you think that maybe that could impact the way things play out on the court? Julius is a professional. I'm not suggesting that he, would play any differently. But, whenever there's uncertainty in your future, maybe it just impacts you even unconsciously. So I wonder about that aspect of this thing if they don't extend Randle. Your thoughts there?
And Julius is going to have such an interesting summer, right? Like, a lot of time after the injury, we didn't see a lot of Julius Randle. We barely really saw him in the playoffs, let's say, for a few games on the bench. But it seems like ever since the end of the regular season, he's been doing a lot more public appearances, doing the NBA countdown show before the finals. It's almost like he's campaigning to stay in New York City and be like, hey, I want to be here. I want to win here. And I think any Knicks fan who has watched how this team looked from January on, or even in the years past where Julius had all NBA level seasons, you'd still want to hold on to him unless, yes, there is that big home run trade out there, which me personally, I don't think is really out there. The only question for me that comes with Julius Randle remaining a New York Knick is his health. The last 2 seasons were compromised because Julius Randle wasn't on the floor. And for your all-NBA player to not be on the floor when you need him the most, as much as we love him, as much as he's given to this franchise, that's something you have to keep into account when it's time to extend someone's contract. So it gets really interesting and it gets really tricky because not only does that put the Knicks in a certain situation, but like I said, if that trade is out there, Julius Randle probably has the most attractive combination of talent and contract to at least make something work with another superstar that you'd want to bring to New York City if you don't want to be in the Julius Randle business for the next 3 or 4 years. Me personally, I think he's a fit. I'd love for it to work out. But again, this is a business, and you never know how things are going to work out, especially when you're coming off of injuries in 2 of the past postseasons.
The next big free agent for the Knicks would be Isaiah Hartenstein. Knicks big man obviously stepped in and stepped up big time when Mitchell Robinson got hurt this past season, played a pivotal role to get the Knicks to where they were, and he's going to command big money in the offseason. Not many teams with significant cap space, but I think if you're thinking about Hartenstein's free agency, you look at Oklahoma City, you look at Orlando, you look at Detroit, and Orlando in particular had significant interest in Hartenstein. Last time he was a free agent, he chose New York over the Magic. I don't know if the money was equal, wasn't equal, but one thing about Hartenstein, he was willing to re-sign with the Clippers on a lower number to go back there his last free agency because he felt comfortable in that situation. And that just tells me that if the money's equal, or even if he's taking a little bit of a haircut with New York, I would think he would lean towards coming back here because of what he did these past few seasons and his comfort level with the group and how he fits this group. Now, look, the Knicks can only offer $72 million over 4 years because they have Hartenstein's early bird rights. A team like OKC, a team like Orlando could come over the top and really put together a big balloon offer, maybe 2 years, $50 million, something like that, would really make Hartenstein think. Now, I know that after their playoff run, the Knicks felt like they were in a good place on both OG Anunoby and Isaiah Hartenstein, while also acknowledging those two are going to get interest from other teams, and they're going to have to deal with that. And so I think, as you'd expect right now, the Knicks, I think, are planning for all their options, including possibility of losing Hartenstein, while also feeling like they have a good shot at retaining him. And I think they're keeping an eye on the free agency market with the centers and seeing what plan B, C, D would be if Hartenstein were to leave. Kaz, for you, you're pitching Hartenstein on staying with the Knicks, even though he has a big offer from another team. What would you say to him, and how important is he coming back here for this team's success?
My biggest pitch to Isaiah Hartenstein will on top of, doing, Jimmy Kimmel spots and the certain celebrity that comes with being a New York Knick, culture-wise, he was, such an important and integral part to the DNA of what this Knicks team eventually became towards the second half of the season. He is a guy who rebounds, who passes better than the average big man, who could defend anybody out there, did a valiant effort against Joel Embiid, even though he was still on Mars during this playoff season. I think chemistry goes a long way, and I think the fact that he was willing to take less money to stay in a winning situation like Los Angeles Clippers gives you a little bit of hope that he would stay in New York, given the success that this team had towards the end of the season. However, the Oklahoma City Thunder scare the crap out of me because they're young, they have the cap space to do it, they need a guy to sort of protect Chet Holmgren, and he kind of fits that mold of their version of what Steven Adams was to a previous generation of Oklahoma City Thunder. So if there's any team out there that worries me the most about losing to iHeart, it would be the Thunder. And that is a team that has a championship window that is just as open as the Knicks, but they're a little bit younger. So money, championship, it wouldn't shock me, but I don't want it to happen.
OKC would definitely be, on that radar of teams to watch, even though it hasn't been Sam Presti's nature to go out there and splurge during free agency. But for Isaiah Hartenstein, I've came away with the observation I came away with after this season is that he needs to be back with the Knicks, and he needs to be the de facto starting center for the Knicks. I was impressed with so many things that Isaiah Hartenstein improved on since he's been here with the Knicks. His defense, his rebounding, he gave Tom Thibodeau a lot of credit for that. His floater game was on point throughout the season and the postseason. The two-man action that he ran with Jalen Brunson, we saw a lot of potential there that I would like to see the Knicks tap into. When you have a five-man that can make high IQ plays, both as a shooter and as a playmaker, I think it adds a little bit of versatility to that Knicks offense and allows some more fluidity in their offense where you can get it out to your three-point shooters and not just have to rely on Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle to create for the rest of the team. So he's moved from just a reserve player to now a vital piece, especially when you have to factor in injury time for Mitchell Robinson. It may be ideal for the Knicks to move forward with Ihart as a starter and maybe Mitch as a reserve to limit his load as well.
A lot of decisions to be made at the center position for the Knicks. Right now, we're going to go to our guy, Matt Spenley, SNY social media guru. He's got a fan question for us. Matt, what's happening?
What's up, guys? Hope you guys are having a great summer so far. Hope everything's going well. Excited for all this offseason discussion. CP, I'm coming to you for this one. Question is from our guy Don Juan on YouTube. Any players you have eyes on and the Knicks should target? So I know we've talked about a lot of the similar names that tend to come up around this time, but I'm curious for you, CP. Who are the type of guys that you're actually keeping an eye on if you're looking for the Knicks to establish that level of continuity and keep the same kind of team? So who are those guys, maybe under the radar a little bit, that you have your eye on?
Well, the culture's been laid down by Tom Thibodeau. You have to play hard, you have to be physical, and you have to be coachable. You know, those are the guys that they brought in Brunson and DiVincenzo and Hart, Ihart, Deuce McBride. And so with that mid-level exception, with the Knicks needing a backup point guard, Tyus Jones comes to the top of my list. Another guy who I liked is Monte Morris. Now, he had an injury-plagued season last year, but a tough guy who can play defense, who can shoot the three ball fairly well. I like him and McBride back there causing havoc for opposing offenses and defenses. And then I'm also looking at that Bogdanovic contract. Are they going to utilize it as a trade chip? I want to see what's going on with Atlanta. Is DeJounte Murray potentially available? Is it DeAndre Hunter potentially available? For the Knicks, I'd like to see them get that depth to help shore up the bench with some shooting, with some defense, more athleticism as well.
Matt, we're going back to you for another one, right?
Beautiful. I'm coming right to you, Ian. Yeah, CP, great names. I think good for us to keep an eye on. Ian, I had a question about Bojan Bogdanovic. The Knicks have about 10 days to decide if they're going to guarantee his contract for next season, about $19 million, $20 million. So do you think the Knicks pick up that option? You have any sense of what direction they're leaning? Obviously, they would keep him to potentially use him as a contract in trades, or keep him because his shooting was valuable at times in the playoffs. Any gauge on Bogdanovic and how the Knicks are leaning there?
I do think ultimately they will pick up that option. I don't know if a decision has been made yet. I don't know if it's been communicated yet, but I would think that they do pick it up, because if you look at the avenues to improve the roster, it is through trade, and you need a salary like Bogdanovic's to include in a trade. So that's just talking off the court. On the court, I thought he started to play really well in the postseason, started to get comfortable, hit some big shots off the Knicks bench. So he showed you how he can help you on the court. You know he can help you off the court if you have that big trade coming up, because the other salaries you're looking at would be a Mitchell Robinson, a Josh Hart, a Dante DiVincenzo, a Julius Randle to make things work. So I think that's why the Bogdanovic salary is so valuable, because you wouldn't want to automatically move one of those other guys, and that's why I would expect them to pick it up. But again, I don't know if a final decision has been made there. And I don't know if we're going back to you, Matt. I don't think so. So I think we're going to go.
Oh, you got it. Go cook.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go stargazing. We're going to go in stargazing now, because as we talk regularly on this show about the Knicks, it is about getting another big player ultimately. I think that's where their focus still lies, regardless of what happens in the draft, regardless of what happens in the offseason. I do think ultimately that's where they are. So let's take a look at a couple options here. One is Paul George. Paul George, talked about him earlier. The idea that he may not get a deal done with the Clippers, and he may be looking for another team to go out and give him that last big deal that he's looking for 4 years. Clippers have not been willing to go there to date. I think Philadelphia, I think they would, if I had to guess, go 4 years. I don't know if the Knicks would. I know that Knicks have been interested in Paul George in the past. I'm not sure, though, that if you bring back OG Anunoby, Paul George is that guy that you go all in for. If you lose Anunoby, it's a different conversation. That's where I think it hinges on Paul George. CP, what are you keeping an eye on in terms of the trade market and that big name that may be out there?
Yeah, it's hard to see right now because, as Kaz said earlier on the show, it just doesn't seem like that name is out there. James Jones from Phoenix said you can forget about any of those Phoenix big three being available. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, namely. I would have no interest in Bradley Beal. Donovan Mitchell. Or is he going to sign the extension with the Cavs? Does he go somewhere else? Like you had said, Ian, on a show earlier, it doesn't seem like the Knicks have much interest in Donovan Mitchell as they once had 2 years ago. Karl Anthony Towns, I'm really not interested in that. Would Minnesota go ahead and try to peel that back after the success that they had, and also in the backdrop of ownership uncertainty? So is the Towns pursuit really there? That's why I go back to a guy like a DeJounte Murray, mid-level players who can help move your depth a little bit forward. You get young, you get athletic, and it just keeps the Knicks in that competitive arena around the East. I'm just not sure if that home run splash is available for the Knicks right now.
Yeah, I don't think there is one, but a name that I've really started to really become enamored with over the past few days has been Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans, right? Like, he's a guy who has an all-star level talent, and one thing that I've noticed about this Knicks team towards the end of the regular season and the postseason was like, man, they score, but like, I would love to see them get bigger on the wing and get more athletic as scorers. I mean, being able to finish at the rim and get threes are great. But if you got somebody who's in the 6'7" to 6'10" range who could stretch the floor out a little bit and that could score in the mid range, that would be a great get. Also, it doesn't seem like Brandon Ingram will cost a farm as, one of these other superstars might cost for, a Booker or a Towns or any of these other like megastars that have sort of been floated around over the past several years. Brandon Ingram seems like he would be a nice fit. Watching the end of that Pelicans series, obviously with Zion hurt, I don't like to play armchair psychologist, but he looked a little burnt out from the situation, just as far as his injuries concerned as well. Maybe a fresh start in New York alongside Josh Hart, a guy who he played with for a good amount of his career in Los Angeles and New Orleans, could help ensure some of that chemistry that we've seen with the Nova Knicks so far. So over the past few days, I'm starting to really come around on thinking, if you can go and make a swing for Brandon Ingram and still possibly hold on to Randle and Brunson and the guys that you really helped build this team around, that could be something really special.
Yeah, the Pelicans have a decision to make on Ingram, whether they want to offer him a max extension or whether they don't, and where they feel comfortable with there. Obviously, Zion Williamson has that big contract, and they're going to have to pay Trey Murphy III. So they're going to have big decisions financially coming up. Maybe that makes Ingram available. I know teams are kind of planning as if he could be available. I don't know about the Knicks. I haven't heard specifically on them and Brandon Ingram. I would keep an eye on Cleveland, especially if Donovan Mitchell does decide to stick around, which I think that's the way it'll go at this point. I would keep an eye on the Cavs, maybe poking around on Ingram, seeing what it would take to trade for him, because you put him in Cleveland, depending on who's left, that could be a pretty formidable foe in the Eastern Conference. And other names, Jimmy Butler, I think depending on how high Miami wants to go for him, for his extension, for his next deal, maybe he becomes available. Is he a Knick target? Look, they have the draft capital to get involved in any of these conversations. If teams are looking for top young players back, I would think other teams could put together a stronger package. But when it comes down to just draft capital, I think the Knicks will be right there with any team that they want to get involved with, conversation-wise. I think so. Butler, you keep an eye on, but I don't see him as being the guy that the Knicks push all their chips in as the final piece here. I think that player has yet to emerge. So let's move on, because one order of business that the Knicks have to take care of, not in theory, not maybe trading for a star. They have to figure out something with Tom Thibodeau entering the final year of his contract. He's been inarguably the Knicks' best coach of the last 2+ decades, and no head coach wants to go into the final season of his deal without any protections beyond that. Nobody wants to be a lame duck. So I still assume that the Knicks and Thibodeau do get something done here on an extension. The going rate, it seems, is around $10 million a year for these coaches right now, and I'm more curious about the length of this deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Thibodeau got an extra 2 years tacked onto his deal. I would be surprised if he got an extra, 4 or 5 years tacked onto his deal with this extension. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. But Maurice Cheeks being added to the staff is, to me, just another piece of evidence that Tom Thibodeau is going nowhere. And by the way, Cheeks' addition did not come in someone else's stead. None of the Knicks assistants had left to make room for Cheeks. He is just an addition at this point. So I think that's important to note too. Kaz, for you, Tibbs, extension, how long would you go? How much money would you give up?
When it comes to Tibbs, as long as he keeps the basketball sickos happy, you can pay him whatever he wants, right? Like, Tom Thibodeau is a guy who has probably more intertwined with the culture of their NBA team than only a handful of other NBA coaches out there. And that's including the Popoviches, the, Spoelstras, and those sort of guys. Tom Thibodeau's DNA is throughout this team. And I think the weight on announcing what this contract extension is going to be is probably just a year. So I would probably do another 4. You know what I mean? Like, I would go 4 years, make him one of the top 5 highest paid coaches in the league, and try and keep that synergy going throughout the front office, the head coach, and everybody else within that Knicks organization. It's quietly turned into one of the most well-run organizations in all of the NBA. So it doesn't really, I'm not really concerned that they don't get a deal done that both sides are happy with. I just think this is a product of how well-run the Knicks have been in the past several years, where nothing leaks out, nothing comes from anybody. I know we'd love to hear from Leon Rose and have a couple of interviews here and there, but I think that sort of helps, the health of the organization right now. So whatever it takes to keep Tibbs around, I don't think he's going anywhere, and he's going to deserve every single penny. He should have got some more Coach of the Year votes, if I'm not mistaken.
You pay him what he wants, and whatever he gets, he would have deserved. As long as it's within that market value of a $10 to $13 million, Tom Thibodeau would have earned it as a basketball lifer. I mean, you got Monty Williams in Detroit. He didn't even want the Detroit job, and he's one of the highest paid coaches in the league. And the results are glaring right now. But for Tom Thibodeau to have come here, set the culture, and lay that foundation down, 3 out of the last 4 years they've been in the playoffs. The 4th seed, the 5th seed, the 2nd seed. They finished in the top 5 in the East in all of those years. You look at the guys that are set to be paid as a result of playing under Tom Thibodeau. Emmanuel Quickley's going to get his bag soon. Jalen Brunson soon. Isaiah Hartenstein soon. The all-star appearances for Brunson and Randle. All NBA appearances for those guys as well. I mean, you have to give Tom Thibodeau a ton of credit for the job that he's done here in New York. Leon Rose has done a great job year after year in bringing in the players who want to be coached, right? When we talk about that poll and all those players that have come out against him, well, year after year, it seems like they still can find somebody that wants to play under Tom Thibodeau and is thriving. Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Deuce McBride as well. So listen, you give him what he wants. He's earned it, and he's done a great job so far. And as long as Jalen Brunson is happy with him, this is our guy. This is our 2-man ticket, and this is what the future of the Knicks are going to look like. Well, another free agent decision that's going to have to be made here is Precious Achiuwa. He did a commendable job for the Knicks, especially in the February stretch when Julius Randle went down. And I think, they'll wait as free agents wait through free agency, allow the chips to fall and see where they are, especially with Isaiah Hartenstein. But maybe if Hartenstein goes, do they look to bring Precious Achiuwa back? Some other backup options if they do lose Isaiah Hartenstein. You have Goga Bitadze, 24 years old from Orlando, good rebounder, good defender. Could he be had there for the mid-level? Jonas Valanciunas. He will be atop of that center list, which is not that deep in free agency. Does Kevon Looney become a cap casualty in Golden State? Another good rebounder that would fit in well here with the Knicks. Maybe is there a trade to be had? Is it Vucevic from Chicago? Not really clear, what Chicago and their ownership, Billy Donovan, how they want to move forward with that team. Do they try to remain competitive, or do they start to peel the onion back a little bit? Could Vucevic be a guy that could be had? I think those are some names that would be on my radar.
CP, a name that I've had on my radar for a while is my guy Slobo for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Kyle Anderson, a local product here in New Jersey, a person who quite literally plays at his own speed, but has been effective at every level of basketball. Seems like he would be a very good Tibbs fit, and just money-wise, especially if you lose out on any combination of OG or Precious or anybody like that. I think Kyle Anderson would be a great sort of get if you can go out and get him. And as far as like wing scoring as well, I'm a big fan of Doug McDermott. Right, like he played for the Pacers. I love my guy Dougie McBuckets. I'm thinking of people just in case you don't hold on to a Bojan or you don't hold on to some of these guys. The names aren't as sexy as they can be, but these are folks who have been, have some ties to the area, are veterans who are pros who won't really, cost you a ton of money, but could definitely still be very effective. Doug McBuckets is a guy who I think could fill in admirably if you end up losing on a Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, Bojan's definitely had more success on the NBA level, but you're not asking him to do what you'd ask, Bojan to do if he would come and be a New York Knick, and he wouldn't cost you a bunch as well. So my big thing after this offseason is getting wing scoring. I love seeing Josh Hart's three-point sort of evolve, but, he's still only about 6'5", 6'6". And when you're going up against those giant 6'10", 6'8" dudes of the Browns and the Tatums of the world, which is the standard now, there's no other way around it. You're going to have to go through them, and more than likely go through a retooled 76ers team with a healthy Embiid and possibly adding a Paul George. You got to get wing scoring quickly. So those are guys that I'd love to sort of add on if there was any money left over towards the end of this regular season.
Yeah, wing depth is definitely going to be vital. I like what Bojan gave the Knicks, especially late in the season and into the playoffs, but he is older, and he's one of those guys that you have to pencil in injury time for. They need to start moving away from some of those guys. Injuries it's hard to predict, but certain guys just have a lengthy rap sheet that you just have to know that. They've got to move on from him if they can, get a clear upgrade, get a bit more athletic, and as you said, get some more wing depth. And that could come via the draft. They have the 24th pick. They have the 25th pick in the draft. Will they package those two picks and try to move up? Do they use one and use the other one to move back or punt it for future drafts? But one thing's for sure, one of those picks, I think the Knicks need to utilize and try to draft a wing who's ready to play. A lot of people have their eyes on Ryan Dunn out of Virginia. Only problem is can't hit the broadside of a barn. So I don't know if he's giving us, plus defense on one side, but he's part of the construction business. Is that the guy we really want at 24, 25? It's going to be interesting to see.
There's a guy out of Illinois that I've really taken a liking to, especially during the NCAA tournament, Terrence Shannon. He's a senior out of Illinois. He can get buckets. He is a guy who can score on every single level. And I like that he's a senior. I like that he's got some time. And I think the fact that he is a senior sort of lines up with the timeline of the New York Knicks, where it doesn't seem like they would have to take a bunch of time to develop him as a rookie. I like him being drafted in the same sort of vein as a Yami Yaquez, or, how the Miami Heat always get some senior dude who played 4 years of college and just is ready to contribute right away. The Knicks would need to draft a guy like that if they are going to use at least one of those three picks in next week's NBA draft. And Terrence Shannon seems to be someone who could fit that bill right away for the New York Knicks. But as far as packaging it and going for a star, I think we're all in sort of agreement here. If that, star disgruntled player or, soon-to-be free agent is there to be had, those are the picks that you need to use to go out and get them. Or you take those and punt into next year and see if you can, get another first-round pick in next year's draft, which should be a little bit more fruitful than this year's.
Yeah, CP said it. I agree. I think they use at least one of these on a player, if not two or three, because at the end of the season against the Pacers, depth was an issue. Back end of the rotation was an issue, not just because of the injuries, but they felt that, they needed a little bit more in those instances. And that led to, I think, some significant conversations about how to approach this draft and the idea of getting at least one quality player who come in and can contribute to the program. So I would expect they make one of those in the top 38. You guys mentioned Ryan Dunn. They had him in for a workout, Long Island's own. They also had Baylor Shireman, shooter from Creighton, in for a group workout recently, I was told. So they're taking a look at some players. I'm sure they'll talk to many more players as the draft approaches and work out several more guys as the draft approaches. But Dunn, you talk to other teams, they keep bringing up Dunn as a player that the Knicks are linked to or like. So that's what other teams think about the Knicks right now with Dunn, that he could be their guy. Let's see how it shakes out, because so much could happen before when you're picking 24, 25. So many different things can happen beforehand. That draft coming up next week, Barclays Center, round 1 Wednesday night. I know you guys are looking forward to it. We at the Putback are looking forward to it, and so that's going to do it for us right now. Kaz, we thank you so much, man. Thank you for joining us. Fanatics, SNY TV contributor, CP, the Fanchise Knicks Fan TV. Thanks a lot for being with us, man. Yes.
We got to shout out our former coach, Jeff Van Gundy, for winning a ring last night with the Boston Celtics as a consultant, and now moving on to L.A. as an assistant under Ty Lue. And our guy, Kristaps Porzingis, got a ring last night. So look at that, man. All the alumni moving on to greener and bigger and better things.
Don't forget about Luke Cornett getting a ring, too.
The Unicornet's got a ring as well.
Yes.
So one day it'll be us. One day we'll be there, man.
So, we're back next Wednesday, the day of the draft. So be sure to keep an eye out for us there and for your nightly Knicks coverage on Honda Sports Night and SNY.TV. And we'll see you then.